The Devil Blues by I Know a Man on AO3. Episode 15. Chapter 10. Missing. I'm worried about Shinso. How did you get my number? Katsuki asked, voice wrecked from interrupted sleep. It was included in the station operation cooperation pre-hire brief. Izuku shares quickly before resuming his panicking. I'm worried about Shinso, Bakugo. Deku. It's like 1 a.m. Don't call me that, he whines, frantically running his hands through his hair. We were supposed to play pool together like we do every Tuesday night, and he didn't show up. I waited for ages, and he didn't show. Izuku had tried to enjoy his day off. He really did. As soon as he abandoned the idea of ever getting himself a nice cup of coffee to wake his lazy ass up, he set himself a bunch of tasks to complete for the day. Sure, it might not be the most obvious way to relax, but his call with Uraraka and the whole squad that morning had riled him up into unhurdled levels of stress. There was no way he'll be able to sit back and enjoy some mindless Netflix now when the words of his closest friends were running through his mind like they were trying to break the goddamn Olympic record. No, he couldn't afford a moment to rest. Instead, he did everything he's been putting off the past 6 months. He aired out his flat, he hovered all the floors, followed by a proper mopping. Hand-washed his laundry that couldn't be dreamt of surviving the washing machine, and he shooed all the spiders out of the corners and tore down their webs. The last tack had been extremely taxing, and he's honestly not sure whether having used stress to battle stress was a particularly good idea. Nonetheless, it had been done, as had all the other chores, and by the time Izuku could dust his hands of everything, evening had rolled around. Luckily, it was a Tuesday, which meant he wouldn't have to think up any more activities to occupy his time with. No, Tuesday was his pool night with Shinso, and that meant Izuku could give in to his vain side, style his hair, don his nicest jacket, or as nice as you could get in a battered old pub, and enjoy an evening of catching up with his friend. Although he and Bakugo had missed out on the guy the day before, Izuku would be able to get a one-on-one with Shinso this time around and hopefully chat, gossip, and even ask if he knew anything at all regarding the Namada gang. That had been the plan. However, when Izuku arrived at the usual hang, Shinso was nowhere to be found. It wasn't unusual for the guy to be a tad late to these events, and so Izuku hadn't thought much of it. Instead, he ordered a beard, take a seat next to the pool tables so he could scout where the best cues were being used, and waited, and waited, and waited. Finally, over an hour and a half with no Shinso and 7 unanswered calls to his cell, Izuku had worked himself into a proper fright. He hadn't known how to handle the situation at all. His friend hadn't shown up to their weekly meetup at the playing pool, hadn't been at home yesterday, and in fact, the last contact they had been when Shinso messaged Izuku, warning that people had begun picking up on his involvement with the drug operation. The last bit of information is what really triggers Izuku's detective instinct, and they were loudly and blaringly alarming that his friend was in trouble. He didn't have any evidence, and he didn't know if anyone else had seen Shinso for the past 24 hours. But Izuku himself hadn't, and as such, that warranted submitting a missing persons report. That's what he had intended. However, a quick call to the station shows that there's little help to be found. The night crew confirms what Izuku already knows, but had hoped could be loopholed through his connections. And that is that, unless he could confirm that none of Shinso's close friends or family had any confirmation that they hadn't seen him for the past 24 hours, then legally they couldn't put out a missing persons report. The news is devastating, and only fans Izuku's worry. He's startingly going mad with concern, fretting, antagonizing, overthinking, and overanalyzing all the possibilities that could have caused this. Obviously, it's because of Izuku. Obviously, it's because he was poking around with the case, and Shinso had helped him. Obviously, it was because they were friends. Izuku was a cop, Shinso a near crook, and as such, Shinso was seen as untrustworthy and a liability in his neighborhood. Obviously, it was all because Izuku. God fucking damn it! His mind was racing a mile a minute, jumping hurdles, black flips, long jumps, everything and everything that pushed his anxiety to the edge. He had to do something. Had to. He couldn't not do something. What kind of police officer would he be? More importantly, what kind of friend would he be? He couldn't call help from his squad. Because just like the night crew, they hadn't been able to break the law simply because Izuku was distressed that his friend had been missing for 2 days. No, he couldn't involve them. But he had to get back on the task. He had to think of ways to look into the mystery of his missing friend. Had to think of some other method of sidestepping the law. And fuck it. If desperate times call for desperate measures. Alright, hang on. Bakugo murmurs. There's something moving on the other side of the end, which startles after a moment. First off, how do you know something's wrong? He's not answering my calls or messages. Izuku answers immediately, voice wrecked. He wasn't there when we went to visit him 2 days ago. I can't reach him. Silent greets him through the phone, and after what feels like centuries, Izuku announces, I'm going to his place. No, wait. I'm going. He intones, hands curled into a fist. There's the sound of shuffling responding through the phone. Where are you? Why do you want to know? I'm coming with you. Izuku swallows over a dry throat. His mouth refuses to cooperate at first, but he manages a second try. You don't have to. Bakugo emits a snort. Please, you asked me to. I didn't ask. You called me in the middle of the night telling me you were going to visit your possibly missing friend's residence in the middle of the fucking night. You may not have said these exact words, but your actions gave you away. Izuku didn't know what else he had expected from Bakugo. Maybe calling him in the late hours of the night had been a well-calculated move on his part, or the last result of his desperate self. All he knows for sure is that hearing those words had Izuku deflating with relief. His throat feels constricted, almost as if he wants to cry, but he manages not to. Instead, he says, I'll be there in half an hour. I'll be there in 20. Bakugo promises, and hangs up. As soon as Izuku pulls up with his car, he spots Bakugo waiting for him outside Shinso's building. As soon as Izuku pulls up with his car, he spots Bakugo waiting for him outside Shinso's building. He's draped in a big jacket, clearly meant to combat the cold, staring Izuku down as he approaches. You arrived here quickly, Izuku observes absently as he heads straight for the entrance. Told you I would. Bakugo replies as he trails after Izuku. They rush up to Shinso's floor without exchanging a single word. Izuku's so worked up, he takes 2 steps at a time, practically sprinting up the stairwell. His agitation doesn't stop there. When they reach Shinso's door, there's no response. Not after 1 set of knocking, not after 2, and certainly not after some knocking to the windows. The lack of response does little to obviate Izuku's already presenting hysteria. Shit. That's weird, Bakugo observes, folding his arms across his chest. Izuku shakes his head, lip quivering. I knew it. I knew something was wrong. He can feel his head grow woozy. He's unsteady. Not even his feet can ground him. Izuku shakes his head again, more violently, trying to clear his head enough to think. Bakugo doesn't even try to interrupt his erratic behavior, instead choosing to cup his hands over the window and peer through Shinso's place. He barely gets a few seconds to look before Izuku breaks out of his spell and repeatedly knocks at the front door again, as if possessed. Bakugo immediately grabs Izuku's wrist and pulls it back. Stop that. He hisses through clenched teeth. There are neighbors. I'm worried, Bakugo. Izuku wails in a hush, as if that would somehow excuse his conduct. No shit. The blonde snorts. You seem mad fucking calm. His voice of tone does nothing to ease the unrelenting tension in Izuku, who is on the verge of an outburst. But Bakugo barrels on regardless. Anyways, I couldn't see anything inside. None of the lights were on, which could just be because he's asleep. He's an insomniac. Izuku interrupts, shooting down that possibility. He doesn't sleep well. I can easily believe that, Bakugo murmurs. Well, considering the situation, and how tight you two seem to be, it is odd he's not reaching out to you in any way. Which means... He trails off for a moment before locking eyes with Izuku. You're probably right. about something being wrong. Izuku grabs his curls with a pained groan. Oh my god. I knew it! Ugh! That's all my fault. Gentle hands grasp at his wrist and firmly peel his hands from his hair. Izuku's too shook up to fully register what's happening. Bakugo steps closer to him, making sure to catch his gaze before asking in a surprisingly steady voice. What do you think we should do? I don't know. Izuku shakes his head. I don't know. Technically, we're not supposed to be here. It's outside work hours. You're not here as a police officer. You're here as a friend. At least, that's what I'll claim if anybody asks. Izuku is beside himself with worry at this point. His shoulders have begun trembling, and he can't seem to get them to stop. Thank you. So, Bakugo starts cautiously. Like I asked. What now? I don't... Izuku utters. I don't know. I need to think. My mind's going at breakneck pace. A heavy silence descends over the two of them. They stand in the hallway, not a single noise breaking through the quiet. Even their breathing is unobscured. Izuku snaps his eyes shut. I need to think outside. I need fresh air. Bakugo inclines his head. All right. They head back down the stairwell. Izuku rushes to the bottom, dying to get out of the stifling indoors and inhale some fresh air. He breaks through the entrance door and immediately begins pacing. A few moments later, Bakugo exits the building, remarkably calmer. He doesn't get involved, but simply stands to the side as Izuku continues to speed back and forth while muttering to himself. This is on me. This has to be on me. Things were fine before we got assigned to this case and started snooping around the facts again. He's helped us when we revisited the reviewing suspects. We dealt with this case away from him after that, and the only point of contact that followed since was him sending that warning text about people having picked up on us delving into the drug operations. Those are straightforward facts. And that somehow landed him in trouble. Izuku whirls on Bakugo. You're not helping! Bakugo's expression grows stern, but he keeps quiet. Izuku quickly resumes his patrolling. So somehow that landed Shinso in trouble. Most obvious option, someone or some people considered him to be a snitch and took him. They did something to him. The array of possibilities that flow through his head has Izuku faltering in his steps. You okay? Bakugo asks as he moves towards Izuku. I'm fine, Izuku stammers. You don't sound fine. A stranded passerby suddenly bumps into Bakugo from behind, propelling him forward. The blonde just barely catches himself in time. He looks towards the stranger with dark look in his eyes and snarls. Hey, watch where you're going, asshole. Kachan, stop that. Izuku admonishingly, distractedly, apparently still clear-headed enough to call Bakugo out on his rudeness. The stranger comes to a halt. They turn on the spot and narrow their eyes on the pair. Izuku suddenly feels the hair on the back of his neck rise, the familiar feeling of trouble brewing nearby. He looks at the stranger and catches them just as they approach him and Bakugo with long, purposeful strides. They're big, huge inside, towering over the two of them with a gaze that fills Izuku with fear. The stranger comes to a slow stop, peering between him and Bakugo. Their voice is deep, hard, shaking Izuku to the core. Are you Katsuki Bakugo? Alarms blare immediately in Izuku's head. The situation is going to escalate. It's gonna go to shit real fast. Real soon if he doesn't stop Bakugo's dumb mouth. He needs to defuse the situation. Bakugo runs a slow, ascending glance over the threat stood before him. What is... He barely splits out two words before Izuku cuts in with such arrogant confidence. It stills him from the shock alone. And what if I am, huh? What is it to you, dickhead? The stranger's eyes fall to Izuku. They seem to gleam in the dark. And the temptation coming from that sight is nothing compared to when their lips widen to reveal a set of jagged, glistening teeth. Izuku's eyes wide, and he has a split second to push Bakugo out of the way before powerful hands are gripping at him and twisting a yell. The pain shoots through his entire body, rendering him defenseless. It's excruciating, but he has to persevere. Izuku, run! What the fuck? Bakugo can hardly clearly yell through the commotion. He sounds very much unharmed, but Izuku can't risk that. Izuku, run! Run! He shouts. His hands pull him back into a hard body, knocking his head so bad the sight becomes blurry for just a second. What the fuck is wrong with you? Bakugo growls. There's a telltale sound of sizzling, hissing, and splitting. And one glance cast up provides exactly what the source is. Bakugo stood ahead, hands lifted, and curled in preparation for a fight. Smoke wafts from his palm, and the sparks working up towards on a full explosion jumping out. No, Izuku convulses. No. Stop! Something cold and sharp is suddenly at his throat. Make another move. A slithering voice whispers behind his ear. And I slit his throat. Bakugo is frozen in place. Panic is written across his face, clear as day. You fucking shit. He curses. That's not Why didn't you run when I told you so? Izuku spits through gritted teeth. I told you to run. Why didn't you? The outburst has Bakugo jerking back in surprise, and he quickly recovers with hot fury of his own. Are you out of your fucking mind? Stop fucking yelling! The stranger splits, cold and furious. At the same time, the sharp object digs further into Izuku's throat, and he can't help but emit a small gasp. The sharp object digs further into Izuku's throat, and he can't help but emit a small gasp. He catches sight of Bakugo's eyes widening at the noise. Lunacy lies in the man's eyes. Izuku can't have that emotion take hold of Bakugo fully. Don't be a hero, Izuku, he whispers through trembling lips. Don't. There must be something in his tone that pierces through to Bakugo, because one moment he's vibrating with rage, and the next he's near limp. Why? His entire body is coiled. Why are you doing this? Izuku wishes he could have said something that could ease Bakugo's eerie, but as it was, he's got nothing. He can't offer anything in explanation. He averts his gaze from the man before him, but that splitting second of avoidance seems to be what pushes the blonde into listening. When Izuku next looks up, he catches sight of Bakugo just as he crumbles in place, face breaking and arms falling limp to his side. He stands unmoving, static, completely and utterly still, as Izuku is carefully herded backwards. Izuku is reminded of the sharp object pressing against his throat with every step taken. He's pretty sure it's drawn blood, but he can't stand to care right now. His one and only focus is keeping gaze and eyes on Bakugo's. Red, luminous eyes tracing over every move. It's the last thing he sees before he's pulled into darkness. That's how the chapter ends. Chapter 11 is called Hostage Situation. I'm sorry, that's how the chapter ends? We have we have 3 more chapters to go through. What? That's how the Can we go back to when our biggest problem was the fact that Izuku had feelings for Bakugo and Bakugo has feelings for Izuku? That was good times. What is this? Also, it's kind of ironic that Izuku is telling Bakugo to not be the hero, pretending to be Bakugo. It's still the 15th. It's still the 15th for me. Hi, welcome everybody. You heard that right. I recorded 4 videos today. These aren't the only 4. I'm gonna record 6 more because I'm insane like that. No, I need to catch up. I've been taking too much break days. That's what happens when I take a break. I have to take catch-up days. Normally they're not so... I plan in the future to not be so caught in together like this. But because I don't have that many advanced days, shit piles up, shit piles up. Plus, I wanted to do this. I had nothing better to do today, so whatever. I've been having a rough morning, with the whole banana fish thing. Also, the My Hero Academia fandom right now is allergic to happiness. I mean, so is the banana fish fandom. So both of them are allergic to happiness, and both of them are all that's on my For You page right now. So I open up TikTok and I sob. If I see one more motherfucking TikTok about BKDK and sad, or Deku sad, or Banana Fish sad, I'm gonna go insane. And then I come here and I decide to record, and what do I find? This bullshit. Read ahead. No, I'm not gonna read ahead. I'm gonna read with you guys. I will not be reading ahead. You heard that right. I will not be reading ahead. Even though I desperately want to. You guys can read ahead though. I understand. Don't worry. I understand why you would want to read ahead. I would also wish to read ahead. Anyways, as always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.